Welcome. Thank you to everybody for joining the session today. My name is Charlie. I'm one of the founders of Attensa. And on behalf of all of us, we hope that you and your families are healthy and well. This session, we're going to focus as an introduction to Attensa and to the Attensa platform and application. So we'll move through quite a bit of material fairly quickly. If you have any questions, please put them into the chat. And then toward the end of the session, we'll pull those out of the chat. We'll answer those for everybody. If you have a question that is very specific or you don't feel comfortable sharing it in the chat, please feel free to email me directly. My email address is on the screen, and we will get back to you right away and put together the right group of people to answer your question, whether it's technical or product oriented or customer success, and we can share with you best practices and other factors that may come into your question, consistent with obviously privacy for our customers. Um, so with that, I'll start with an introduction to Attensa, and I'd like to do that through the lens of the common problems that we're dealing with today in most cases, in terms of integrating external information into our work, into our knowledge and learning, and into our business and professional environments. Um, the first challenge is the breadth and number of sources that contain information that are potentially valuable to us. Um, and this is just a parcel listing on the right. The second problem that flows from that is the amount of information that is coming through each of these sources on a daily and weekly basis. So even if we could get our arms around pulling all the sources together, figuring out from all the information that's flowing through those sources what is important to us, what matters to us in our organization is a major task. And that leads to the third challenge, which is the tools and processes that are in use today largely were not designed for the environment that we're in. And I'll mention one situation in particular that I think is pretty ubiquitous, and that is the use of a lot of individual tools. Um, that has two major problems. One is it's inefficient and leads to redundancy of work. But the second is we feel like it's a huge lost opportunity because there are, in addition to saving time, there are a lot of positive things that come out of a shared environment with information in terms of people having a higher level of awareness and access to the things that will help them do their jobs better and leveraging the community as a whole. So those are three really important problems that are tough to address today. But if you're an information professional and your job is to help others uh, be aware and access the information that they need to do their jobs, then you have some additional challenges. In addition to working across multiple platforms, you need to be able to take the products of your work and get it to the right people at the right time in a way that they will be aware of it and have a chance to take action on it. And that is a whole nother set of challenges that our platform is designed to help address, and we'll cover that in a little bit. But I'll say this, the overarching problem and the key um, factor from our standpoint is that information is going to continue to grow. The, the, that that is going to happen, but the attention and the time that we have to deal with it is fixed, and that's not going to expand. So it really falls on technology and improvements in processes to do a better job of helping us manage our attention to the information that matters. And if we're going to take advantage of all that this information abundant world has to offer, then we have to address the attention management issue fundamentally before much else will have a major impact. Attensa is a new layer of technology that works with the services and sources that you work with today and expands on that capability by allowing you to access additional sources that you might not otherwise be able to incorporate into your work. But importantly, it takes the information that's flowing through those sources and allows you to transform it into topics. And the topics are the areas of interest that you and others in your organization have. So the content that's flowing through is no longer dependent on how the source organizes it. You have control over that. And they can be as narrow or as broad as you need them to be for whatever purpose you're using them. Once you've created those topics, then they can be published into a shared catalog where other members of your team or organization can discover them and can follow them. And when they do follow them, then they will receive updates whenever uh, the topic has new information added to it. And those updates we call briefings can be delivered across different channels depending on personal preferences and organizational preferences. So this forms a natural shared community around key areas of interest that both might be strategic to the organization or they might be personal in nature in terms of individual jobs and roles. So that's a quick overview of the platform. Now let's take a look at the actual web application. A couple of quick observations about the workspace that we are going to be using for this discussion. First of all, it's a relatively simple example. It's probably reflective of what your trial might look like or what a proof of concept might look like with a small group. Customers who use Attensa over a period of time end up with a lot more topics than you'll see in this example, and it's designed to handle that just fine. Um, each instance of Attensa is its own workspace, so much like other tools in in your organization, this is private to you and the other members of the workspace. It's not shared broadly with the Attensa world. It's yours. Um, and then finally, I want to point out before we dive into the details of this workspace that you do not have to be in the web app like we are right now to benefit from all that Attensa does. And specifically, here's an example. This is a personalized briefing to me based upon the topics that I'm following in our example workspace. And you can see that this comes out once a day for me. It contains items that are new that I haven't seen since the last briefing I received. And I can click on any one of those items and go directly to the primary article. So these personal briefings are an important component because every day, regardless of how busy I am, regardless of where I am, I know that in my inbox I have a summary of new items in the topics that I'm following and that are important to me. So you don't have to be in the web app to benefit from what Attensa is doing for you all day long. Now, there are some key areas of the workspace that I'm going to quickly cover, and then we're going to drill down into a couple of them. This is my home view. This is showing me the information from the topics that I follow. Under the Discover view, I can see the catalog of topics that are created on our workspace, as well as some shared topics in the Attensa community at large and groups, and I'll explain that more in a moment. And then at the end, we'll touch on the administrative functions. There's also a help tab below that if you select, you'll be able to see contextual help for the page you're on, and you can search for other information there as well. So since we're on Discover, let's start here. Each topic is presented in a tile, like this digital workspace topic is. I can preview it and I can follow it. So that's very straightforward. You'll see that there are actually three sections of this catalog. Team topics, which are the topics created by people within my work group that have been published. Attensa community topics. These are created by Attensa or subject matter experts that we work with. They cover a range of areas, and they're constantly being added and created. So these are a great way to get started and experience the platform. And then groups are exactly what they sound like, in the sense that these are groups of people and content. I can join the marketing team group and I will automatically have a set of topics that I will follow based upon my membership of that group. So it's a great way for leveraging the platform to get started really quickly, and people don't have to figure out or go searching for topics to follow. So that's a quick overview of groups. Now let's go to the home view. I'll talk about this area where I see updates on the topics that I follow. Um, you'll see on the left-hand side, recent items shows me chronologically all of the new information that has been added to topics that I follow. And once I'm done with this, I can actually clear it. And then when I come back, I will only see information since the last time I was there. Bookmarked items are items that I've bookmarked for coming back to. Recommended items are items that are recommended to me by the system based upon my personal profile. So uh, within Attensa, based upon the topics that I follow and the items of content that I read, a profile is developed that helps us recommend to you content you might otherwise not see, and to help you identify the most relevant content in your topics. And I'm going to touch on that again in a minute. Most read leverages the community in the sense that when people read an item, it's a tacit indication that that is a potentially valuable item to the group, and this will highlight the items that are most read. Most liked is very similar, except this is an action that someone took to give the article a thumbs up, and that then is reflected in the most liked items, which helps you identify what other people are finding interesting. Down below, you'll see that these are the topics that I individually follow. And there's an orange dot next to some of them, but not all of them. The orange dot indicates that there's content that's new in that topic since the last time I read. And the reason why that's important is the last thing that you want to do is have to open the topic and figure out, have I seen this before? Um, so this avoids that problem. It keeps track of what's new since the last time you read. So when you select one of the topics, then you'll see the contents on the right-hand side of that topic. You'll also see, in this case, an orange bar next to this particular item. That orange bar indicates that that is the new article. Sometimes there's many of them. In this case, there's only one. So the dot on the outside on the topic tells me there's something new. The orange bar on the inside tells me this is the new item. So I can quickly focus in on that and see if it's of interest to me. I mentioned this earlier, but topics have a complete archive of every item. So these, if you saw something a few weeks ago and you want to go back and find it, it's fairly straightforward. You know where it will be. The orange dots that you see here are another reflection of my profile. So the more orange dots, the higher the predicted relevancy of this item to me personally. Um, it is a way to glance through and say, is there anything in this that I really need to see? I can even sort on that ranking, so I can bring the highest ranked items to the top. When I open an item, then I see a summary of it. I can click on the title and go directly to the source, the origin. Um, I have, depending on the publisher, I have a fairly lengthy summary, and then down below I have recommended similar items. So these are items that exist within the Attensa platform that are similar to the item that I just was reading. It makes it very easy to find additional content that's related to the articles I find interesting. At the top, you'll see tools. So the bookmark tool we already looked at. There's a tool to retrieve more text. If it's a short summary, it will check and see if it has more. I can share the item with others. I can copy the item to another topic if I have, if I own that right. And that's a curation feature that I'll talk a little bit more in a bit. Um, I can rank it. We looked at that a moment ago. So the last icon is the tagging icon, and I'll open that up, and you can see there's quite a few tags here. And this reflects something that happens during our content aggregation process. Um, the content that's coming into the system goes through a number of processes. One of those processes is to semantically tag it. If you're an enterprise customer, you can actually choose the tagger that you'd like to use or multiple taggers. And these tags reflect the nature and meaning of the content. So if I'm interested in a specific area like National Institute of Standards, then I can select that tag and search. And that will find all the other items in the system that are tagged with that tag, and I can review those. If I like that set and I want to stay on top of that, I can actually create a topic for the National Institute of Standards by clicking over here on Create a Topic from Search, and that will automatically create a topic for me. So the other search is just a regular text search. So I can search for items using a text query, and that will find all of the items that, in this case, match space X within the platform. And in the same way, I can also save that as a topic if it's something that I want to stay on top of. And I can also restrict that to searching only my specific topics that I follow. You'll notice two icons here. One is to invite people to this topic, as well as one that will sort the content by rank, which we talked about a moment ago. So that's the reading environment. We've talked about creating topics in the context of search, but we haven't actually created one. So let me show you that. The the primary method to create a topic is to use what we call the topic builder, which will assist you in doing that. So I'm going to give this topic a name. I'm going to stick with SpaceX because I thought that was interesting. And I'm going to put in the keyword SpaceX. Um, that's my intention about what I'd like this topic to relate to. Now, it's good to keep that fairly general to start, and you'll see why, because we're going to be able to refine it. If you're brand new to the system and you'd like some jumpstart to creating the topics, you can click on See Examples, and you'll actually see a number of predefined keyword uh, options where you can just click on them and they will automatically start the topic for you. When I click Start, what's going to happen is the system is going to use my keyword to go out and find the most relevant sources and do an initial filter for the items that fit the topic. In this case, it's 716 sources. That's leveraging our shared resources file that is available to your workspace, and it's 12,610 items. So uh, fairly broad, but not unexpected given the nature of that keyword. Now, down below, you'll see another tag cloud. Um, and this is actually showing me what are the most frequent tags in the context of the topic that I'm starting here. I look through these and I see space tourism and I say, that's really what I'm interested in. So I'm going to choose the tag space tourism. And then I'm going to come up and look and see what impact that had on my topic. And you'll see that the number of sources went from 700 plus to just under 200. The number of items went from 12,000 plus to 1488. I can actually look at those items and see if they match my expectations. I also often will look down the right-hand side, and if I, depending on the topic, if I see a few items per day, I know I'm pretty close in terms of refining it. The 199 sources looks about right, but I can always add or remove sources as needed in the future. Once I have it the way I'd like it to be, then I click next and it takes me to the publish step where I can determine whether or not I want to publish this to our catalog. I can provide a description as well. And then the final step is to the option to share this with existing members of your workspace or to invite new members to the topic. And then as I finish up by clicking save and our topic is created, I can always go back and edit it. And if we go to discover, then you'll see it there. I'd like to talk a moment about curation. We touched on it with the ability to copy from one topic to another, but there's actually another very powerful form of curation that comes into play. Let me show that to you. I'm going to click on the scientific topic as an example for curation. And let's just say I'm a subject matter expert and I don't want the audience of followers of this topic to necessarily see every single item. I'd like to review them before, before they see them. There's two ways to do that. This eyeball is there because I have the ability to curate this topic. And if I click on that eyeball, it will actually hide this topic from all of the other followers. The other method, and the one that's most common, is just the inverse, and that is that if I go to settings, I can um, set the default visibility to hide, which means that the articles that are added to this topic will not be visible to others until I unhide them. And while I'm here, I'll just point out that in the settings, you can do things like enable RSS or enable the ability to post items by email to the topic itself too. So I'm going to save that hide setting, and then we're going to go back and you'll see now that each of the items is hidden. And I can quickly review them. I can even open them and look at them. And then I can choose to unhide items based upon my own review. The followers of this topic will only see the items that I've unhidden. Now, this is a very effective way to curate for two reasons. One is the platform is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. It's gathering the sources, it's doing a pre-filtering, and then you're able to, as a curator, you're able to very quickly review them and approve them. That's used in some very specific circumstances. I'm happy to go into more detail. If you're interested, just shoot me an email. The last area I'd like to touch on is the administration area. The top section is available to everyone. And importantly, I'll highlight this is where you control your briefing, the time of day that you're going to get it, as well as you can turn it on and off, and you can give it specific name and set the frequency. Down below, you'll see the administrative settings for your workspace. Um, Briefings in particular is interesting because that's where I can create outputs to other types of systems. So I can create a briefing for Slack like we discussed earlier, and I can set the frequency of that and the topics that are included in that. Sources allows me to add sources to my workspace. These are private to me. I have access to a lot of them through the Attensa shared resource file, but now I can create specific sources. Some of these require a subscription, some don't. Customers tend to build on their sources themselves as well. So these can be added to your workspace. And the last area I'll touch on is users. So I can see who are the users of my workspace, are they active or not, and what is their role. That's a very quick tour of the Attensa app. I'll turn to the questions now, if you give me just a second. And while I'm doing that, let me pull up a screen that has our contact information on it in case you need that. So this one, this is from Kate. Thanks, Kate. The question is about external and internal content. Is the platform used for both? Um, can you comment? Sure. So yes, the platform is used for both. Um, and I'll explain a couple of situations. But in general, the predominant way it's used today is with external content, and that's why I've mostly been talking about that. The same problem exists with internal content often as external content. So it can be used with either. Um, the uh, the use case that comes to mind regarding internal content is uh, situations where the organization has multiple publishing platforms, say wikis and blogs and document management capabilities and social platforms, and different work groups have different cultural ways of and processes for creating content that can cause a pretty big problem and create a lot of silos. One solution is to ask everybody to change how they work. That doesn't tend to work out really well. The other solution is to use something like Attensa to aggregate the content from those platforms, allow people to then be search and be aware, um, follow topics related to specific areas of interest, and then drive them back into the subsystems that have the content that they're interested in. Um, that's the internal use case that comes to mind. Sometimes it also is distribution of reports and research and other things that currently are done with sort of ad hoc methodologies like email and not very traceable. So next question is Mike. Um, let uh, let me read the question for everybody. What have you run into with customers using Attensa with purchased content services? It's a great question, right? Because it's a natural, if you purchase content services from publishers and aggregators, it's a natural to want to have that content in a platform like Attensa so that you can carve it up and use it to inform the people who need it. Work from a single platform instead of multiple platforms. Um, Obviously, the most important thing is what your agreement is with the content source, with the publisher, with the premium content provider. Assuming that that agreement is in place, then our platform provides tools to make sure that you're in compliance with it. So a lot of times that will involve uh, uh, purging the content after a certain period of time. It might involve limiting access to specific individuals. Um, uh, our platform has tools to do both. I would add to that that our platform also has excuse me, the ability to report on the use of content that I think is generally going to be more specific or more capable than the reports and the capabilities that most of the publishers have today. So it generally is not an issue, but the most important thing is the relationship that you have with them. And we're more than happy to help there. We may already work with them in one form or another, but with a customer, but or we may need to talk to them and walk them through how the platform works if they're not familiar with us. But this does also raise an interesting point. We are not in the content business. We're in the business of helping you better utilize the content that you have or could have. We're not in the business of selling you any content. So that is, you could say we're content agnostic, but either way, we're going to let you determine the best content. We have a lot of public sources on the system. When I created that SpaceX topic, you could see that it immediately populated with hundreds of sources, and um, that's because we have a resources file that is public information that you can use. So next question is, Helen, do you offer help setting up topics? Yes, we do. Helen, thanks for asking. Um, the first couple of topics you might want some help on to make sure that they're really tight and they're what you're after. And then once you've seen that done, I think it becomes much easier to do yourself. So we encourage you to reach out and have us help. And we have people who are really good at doing that. Mary says, um, can you can you talk about I'm paraphrasing here. Can you talk about curation versus just letting the system run on its own filtering? Um, that's a good question. Obviously the SpaceX topic that we originally created, for example, was um, was just using the system's own, the platform's filtering, and then we turned on the curation, and I described the way that you do that. Um, the vast majority of topics on the system are not human curated. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that it does a really good job um, with the machine-based curation because you have control over the sources and you have control over the filters, and you can tune those to get the results that you want. The situation where human curation tends to be used is, as I mentioned, sometimes with subject matter experts that are adding commentary, and they are approving, or they want to put um, their own eyes on the content before others see it. The other situation where that's common is when you're using Attensa to inform an external audience. So if you're a membership organization, or if you're using it with customers or others, then a lot of times the person that's managing that process will want to hand pick the items that people see, and again, that's a very efficient process. People can review hundreds of items and pick the ones that they want within minutes because the machine is doing all the front end work. I can also say that the results of that are phenomenal. The engagement that we're seeing organizations get when they use it that way is just amazing. Let's see, Howard. Um, we use Slack. You touched on it. Can you explain how that works? Sure. Um, the the um, the Slack capability allows you to take topics, one or more topics, and organize those as a periodic briefing that goes into a Slack channel. So you pick the topics, and you pick the frequency, and you pick the channel. And then the system will do, much like it did with the personalized email briefing, the system will collect the new items and provide a summary of those and insert that into the Slack channel automatically. So it, again, is very effective for putting content into the channel because it doesn't pepper it in separately. It collects up a chunk and it puts it in as a chunk. It's easily identifiable, and it's easily identifiable what it relates to. Terry says, hold on a second. Terry, thank you, Terry. Terry, thanks. The question is, do you have an API that can be used for development? Yes, we do. Uh, the, um, the API, the entire system is based upon an API. It's really an underlying platform, and we were using the API when we developed the browser-based interface that we just were using. The API documentation itself is public. there are certain services that the platform provides that are not documented in that public documentation. And the reason is that um, there's a variety of reasons for that. But if you contact us, which you would want to do anyway, because you're going to need a key to access the API, and you tell us what you're trying to do, well, we will we'll 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 share with you how we would approach it, and we'll make sure that you have the calls and services available to do that. So if you're going to contemplate a project like that, please reach out. The the great thing about that is you can build we people build their own interfaces, people build integrations, people build integrations of sources, internal sources into the platform, and we they build specific catalogs to fit in their specific environments, and that's all done via the API. So we're happy to help you with that if it comes up. We're here to help. If you have any questions after, my address is on the screen now. You can also send an email to info@attensa.com, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great week.